Welcome, everyone. Hello, my name is Renee Alexander, and I am Deputy General Manager of Entertainment and Marketing at the Minnesota State Fair. I am also very honored to be the chair for IEBA for this year, which is we're celebrating our 50th year. I think it's probably fair to say that our industry has never experienced anything quite like what we're experiencing right now with COVID-19 in our 50-year history. So today we're here talking with a couple experts in the industry for our IEBA interviews that have first-hand experience of how this disruption is affecting our industry, particularly from the venue side. So I'd like to welcome Raj Saha, who's the General Manager and Head of Programming for the Pfizer Forum, in Milwaukee, and Zane Collings, who's the Assistant General Manager of ASM Jacksonville, for a conversation just how your venue is being used during this crisis, and then talking about rescheduling and cancellations during this time. So welcome to you both. Glad to have you here.
Thanks for having us.
So
Good to be here.
I'll start with you, Raj. Let's talk a little bit, if you'll just explain a little bit about your facility and how it's being used during this crisis would be a great start.
Sure. So we're a 17,000 seat basketball arena, home for the Milwaukee Bucks. We were recently opened. We were built in 2018 and opened in September of that year. And during this shutdown, what we just started doing is actually using the space that we have between our storage area and our marshaling area and the arena floor. And we're working with some very good local partners to actually make 2 million masks to give to
Wow.
frontline workers in Milwaukee and Southeast Wisconsin.
Wow. So that's a big undertaking for sure. So
It
Zane,
is.
how about you? Talk a little bit about Jacksonville.
So, ASM Jacksonville, we manage 7 venues for the city of Jacksonville, and a couple of our venues are being used to stand up testing sites. So, outside TIA Bank Field and Daly's Place, TIA Bank Field's home to the Jacksonville Jaguars, and Daly's Place is a 6,000 seat outdoor amphitheater. Outside of that, in the parking lot, first the federal government staged a testing site that could ramp up to 500 people per day. And then early April, that switched to a locally funded testing site. It's a drive-up, drive-through. And so that was working with through the local sites. Pretty interesting ramp up to that. Moved very, very quickly. At the same time, another set of our staff at the convention center, which is on the west end of town, west end of the city, through the city of Jacksonville, they stood up a testing site in conjunction with a local hospital company called Telescope that actually set it up. So they use part of the actual convention center for support, whether it's restrooms, food, storage, and that kind of stuff. But again, it was a drive up through our parking lots, our staff to support them. So it was a little different than what Raj did, building masks, but again, doing our part for the community. These times that we've never done before.
Mm-hmm. And you speak about never done this before. So obviously you do events a lot and are used to turning things over. Talk a little bit about the conversion of going into this mode and kind of who's your source of information and kind of source of support through this change. And I'll start with you, Zane.
Okay. So as far as there was a lot of different sources as it related to the build out and the transformation into that. It started with federal support from the government through the governor, who I think have done a pretty good job here in Florida. And I guess we get used to kind of standing up for these. This was not a temporary emergency, but when you're dealing with a hurricane, it can be a 2-week period. So this felt a lot like it. Maybe that's what made Florida understand what we were heading into in that respect. And then locally, the mayor and his team and the emergency preparedness here locally was where the source came from. And then we're part of ASM Global, which is 330 plus venues across the world. There was certain guidelines that they were able to provide us as related to safety as it relates to our employees and risk and how to work with the local municipalities to ensure that we delivered what they needed. So I think a combination of what we have locally, a strong
Mhm.
team, the local municipality, emergency preparedness, JFRD, which is our fire rescue, and JSO, which is our police, working together. And they're the same entities that we work together in a day in, day out to put on mass Florida, Georgia football games. There's a
Sure.
200,000 people in Jacksonville, 82,000 actually going to the football game. Then there's 100,000 people who are partying. So there are people that you work with day in and day out. So the relationships there, our business is so relationship driven that it's there. So it wasn't something new. Yet, yes, we had the new folks come from the federal government. They
Mhm.
hadn't dealt with from the emergency preparedness side, but we have emergency preparedness people tied into all of our big events. So there weren't redeveloping relationships. We're just extending, doing something new.
Great. Okay. Raj, how about you? Yours is a little different situation with, I'm guessing this was more kind of a local kind of grassroots maybe effort, or how did things get started with that, and where were you getting your
Yeah,
information from?
so unlike Dane, we're not used to a lot of natural disasters or weather disasters that you would get on the Florida coasts. We like to say that the Upper Midwest is a little bit insulated from natural disasters, which is actually was our tagline when we were bidding on the Democratic National Convention. Is that there shouldn't be much terrible or horrific weather in July in southeast Wisconsin. So having an NBA team and owning an NBA team, it gave us, it gave us access to what every other NBA team and every other NBA venue was doing, and there's a lot of crossover, not in our building, but to our neighbors to the south, which are the United Center. They have NBA and NHL, so. I remember, we were in the middle of a Lumineers show on March 11th when the NBA, put out that the season was shutting down or not shutting down, but being suspended indefinitely. And you could see the fans in the bowl looking at their phones because they were all getting push notifications from
Mhm.
ESPN or Sports Center or the Bucks or the NBA. So like Zane, we have these great embedded relationships with our local police, with our county health system, state health system. We're partners with a major hospital group here in Wisconsin as well too. So our sources of information are we speak with 3 to 4 different venues on a daily basis to begin with. But we work with the NBA. We work with the NBA head of security and general manager and arena group. And we're probably in the same position as everybody else. We're watching the news. We're listening to science. We're listening to the doctors and medical experts. In trying to I think we've made it through the wave of, okay, we know we're shut down. So now it's the wave of what do we need to do to prepare to reopen, hopefully sooner rather than later in this.
Sure. So talk about a little bit about staffing, because Zane and I, we were talking a little bit earlier about, before we got on the call here, about just everyone has a routine and they know what their responsibilities are. How are you managing your staffing and this different role that they're playing, and kind of keeping those folks engaged and that type of thing?
Sure.
Start
So
with you, Raj.
yeah, we'll start with our event staff, and through the generosity of our entire basketball roster and our owners, we were able to generate funds that would be used as emergency relief for all of our event staff. So that very early on, that was a key focus for us. That's the event staff and the people that really we need and we rely on in order to run all of our events, no matter where we are.
Hmm.
On the full-time side, the first part was the rescheduling of the events and going through your calendar avails, and that kept our events group, quite busy on this. What we've done as an organization is we're using this time to, take a hard look at costs. But from an employee-wide engagement, what we're doing is we've challenged every single full-time employee of the organization to come up with a business case. And we've got a business case competition going on right now of, And there, there will be a reward for those, scenarios or ideas that get implemented, either during this time or coming out of this time too, but, we, and it goes, if you're a ticket salesperson for the box, if you're our, building engineer, if you're our facility manager, if you're our team president, we are all trying to generate ideas, and really prepare ourselves for what can we work on as a group and what can we work on individually to make the venue stronger, and the organization stronger coming out of this.
That's great. Great way to keep staff engaged as well. So, and Zane, you're in a little different situation because you've got, I'm guessing, have more staff that are there on site, or not really? What are you guys experiencing with staffing?
Yeah, thank you. Sorry. Florida does have a stay-at-home order in place, and so we're doing a lot of work from home, but some essential staff have been coming to maintain the buildings. So, and that's kind of ebbed and flowed depending on what's going on with the testing sites. And there was a short time period where AEW, a wrestling company, was actually filming at the amphitheater, Daly's place. So that had to be staffed appropriately. And so I love the Raj idea, and I wish I had thought of it. So congrats to you guys. We've taken an approach of looking at our business and seeing what we're able to do when it's not so busy and loaded up with events. Focused a lot on training, the OSHA 30 stuff, and anything else that we can find. For example, we talk about the box office, and we run 7 buildings, 1,100 events a year, and the box office is always busy. So we're taking this time to run all of our full-time staff through every single Ticketmaster available training session, whether it's to refresh or renew or something new and different. We do use graphics here, and it's a heavy laden program that there's a lot that we can do with it. So we're using that respect, going through all of our existing platforms, whether it's sales and marketing, or whether it's the tech packet, whether it's marketing material, and redeveloping it or tweaking it and adjusting it that way. Plus, we've already started local task force, I'll call it, on how we're going to come out of this. And maybe we're supposed to talk about that later, but engaging.
That's my next question.
So, all right, I'll segue into that. So we're spending a lot of time now looking at the future. We want to be on the forefront of the rebound or coming out of it to what the new norm is. And we've started these local task force by building that also meet across the buildings, because what the stadium does, and we're going to get a lot of resources from the NFL. The NFL is always on the forefront of pushing safety and security. Well, I think the NFL is going to push this as well, because they're going to want fans in the stadium. We all get so, the NFL set security protocols at the same time the NBA and the NHL were doing, and it filters down to the other buildings and at the same time. So we're staying addressed to the specific building and spending time on weekly to-go meetings, conference calls with our staff, but then tasking our staff to go out and find those resources, those best practices that we may not know locally, and then combine them with what corporate guidelines we're getting from ASM, because they're developing them well. And guess what? You may think you have it. I don't know. I don't think I have it, but we don't know what the new norm is going to be. So we all got to be able to react like that and move and adjust so we can be ready to rebound. So focusing on the future, at the same time of doing those things that may not be priority when you're in the middle of a 4-and-4 event run and you just don't have time to do it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that's a great point. So, and talking a little bit more about those, like you said, we don't know what we're going to be coming into when we come out of this, so to speak, as it relates to, what those standards will be, if it's, as it relates to staffing, and will they need masks, or, all of that. So how about you, Raj? What are you guys looking at as far as it relates to kind of coming out of this, and what those standards may look like?
Yeah, well, unfortunately for me, and I hope my superiors don't find out that I might be the root cause of all evil. But I happened to be working at a venue in Midtown Manhattan in September of 2001. So the first thing I went to is try to go back into my memory bank of what did we do between the 11th and then the 29th of September 2001, which got us reopened. And there's still standards that we are all living by today, whether
Hmm.
it's walk through magnetometers, blast resistant glass and walling on the outside of your facility or your event, bollards, planters, all these things that, I think probably most venues in the US were not even doing, 20 years ago, but are doing now. So the first thing, that we looked at, and there's three other or four other people at the Fox organization that also happen to be working at the same venue, 18 years ago or 19 years ago. So it was what was the thought process and philosophy of how we made these decisions? Because during that time too, you were trying to rely on Major League Baseball or the NBA or the NHL, the NFL, but a lot of venues kind of had to think about things on their own and share best practices. And the first thing that we did with this is we know social distancing is a key term, and cleanliness and prevention of germ spread is another key term. So what we did in the first 3 weeks of being shut down is we literally documented every single touch point that occurs in our building, or in our facilities during events, right? So where is the ticket holder customer to a building employee touch point? Where's the ticket holder customer touch point with a surface in the building? And the first thing is we probably wrote or documented over 100 pages worth of every single touch point, because that was going to allow us to really start from the beginning of this and say, okay, well, we know cleanliness and germ spread is going to be the major concern. So immediately, how do we eliminate or come up with a resolution? And we didn't want the initial resolution just be elimination, because we're all in the event sector, and so there is a balance between literally being in a prison yard versus coming to events that we're selling tickets to and we want people to enjoy themselves at. So it was defining that line, and said, okay, here's the touch point. And the example that I use a lot is we have a sign making station inside the arena during events where fans and in particular kids can come in and make their signs. So what are the touch points? So the shared magic marker
Hmm.
is a touch point. So
Sure.
is the and you can easily say we're just going to eliminate it, but we're all in the fun business at the end of the day. So okay, let's not eliminate it. Do we have a system where there's an employee that's standing there that's going to wipe down with a sanitizer the marker after every time a child touches it? Or is it that we may potentially decide that that kids can bring their own markers or highlighters in just to use at the station, and knowing the risks that go along that? So so we've identified, as of today, we've identified the touch points, and now it's
Hmm.
add the resolution and work with every single user group of, hey, the new normal is going to probably be somewhere between no touching and and at least clean touching in this. So for us, that's what we've worked on to date to at least get us in the process of reopening.
Sure, sure. And the marketing person in me would say you make markers with your name on them and then you give them away as they
That's
walk away. So, all right, let's shift over to rescheduling and cancellations. And Raj, you've got a big one that came your way recently with the Democratic National Convention. Why don't you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. So, we between the time that we pressed pause on March 12th, through the DNC, there were still a bunch of shows that needed to be have a status determination. And fortunately, and I think this is fortunate for a lot of the venues, a lot of them have just been postponed rather than just flat out canceled to date, which is great for this industry. Um, you know, as it relates to the DNC, I guess the one good thing about the DNC blocking 65 to 70 days on calendars every 4 years is that there was, unfortunately for us, we didn't have a lot of concerts or anything scheduled in June, July, and even August coming out, because if you've ever worked a convention or seen a convention, there's a lot of reconstruction of a building that happens. Walls are knocked down, in new infrastructure that's temporary that goes in and eventually is taken out. So, shockingly, we had on our calendar, some free time like just that week, and the week it got moved to, and when we started having these conversations, funny enough, was we had a Roger Waters date originally scheduled in that week, and the DNC happened to call us about 48 hours after the announcement was made. I don't know if it was coincidence that they were looking at our calendar or not, and said, "Hey, presumptive nominee Biden is talking about moving this to August. What can we do?" And it will be a very tight turnaround because we have a large corporate event on the calendar in early August. But we worked with them, with the organizers. The organizers worked with our Convention and Visitors Bureau and our local government, and it seemed to be the week that worked perfectly. And as a result, we were able to actually within 48 hours of the first conversation, we had the event moved. So I'd like to say that we moved heaven and earth, and maybe we did, but it was a little bit of the timing was perfect to have the conversation.
Sure, sure. So Zane, how about you? I mean, you've got a lot of buildings and space that are kind of on the line there, and again, nobody knows when they're going to be back online. So I think I mean, at least what I'm seeing here is just people are kind of taking it month by month. But what are you doing with your facilities there?
It's almost a day by day conversation. I think you and I were chatting before we started. I think we're almost working harder now because we're trying to figure out what it's going to be and when it's going to happen.
Mhm.
Here at the ViStar Veterans Memorial Arena, um, we had shows, when this thing shut down on March 12th, I guess was the date when everything came crumbling down. And so you had March shows rescheduling for June. Well, some of those conversations have started that I don't know what's going to happen in June. I mean, we all can probably roll the dice, and our crystal ball is a little muddy. So it's almost a daily conversation with promoters and agents on what's going to happen. And then, some of the shows that are going to postpone are setting up um, secondary plans and waiting to see if we get out of this. So, and the good part is we have a good team here, and they're able to handle their buildings individually, and so that they can give the attention to the various promoters and shows. So, like Raj said, that you work to do what needs to do to get it done. And the good part of it is you find that people are in this together. Um, and, there's going to be answers that are going to no, but most of the time we're trying to figure it out with them, because at the end of the day, when we get through this, we're going to be in an industry with the people that we're in with now. Again, our industry is very relationship driven, and this goes to just prove it point. When you do it together, you can get through it. So
Sure.
it's kind of like everyone's trying to row in the same direction, and seem to be giving everybody a little bit of grace that we're all trying to figure it out. And when we will, because we're all in the same boat and rowing that direction.
Absolutely. Well, and our event is in August. And when I first started seeing dates, shows postponing and moving into August, I'm like, they must know something I don't know. And I realize now they're just buying time. So I think we're all in the same boat and not exactly sure when we're going to see the end of this. So when we do see the end, which we will see the end, what is your feeling as far as what the kind of public sentiment will be, and how quickly do you think they're going to feel about coming back, and what are you hearing, kind of what you think the pulse of the public will be, and you're obviously both taking steps to make sure that when they do come back that they feel safe, but what are you kind of hearing along those lines? I'll start with you, Zane.
Great, I get to go first, huh?
Yes.
Well, I don't think anyone's crystal ball is clear on this, but I think it's going to be a measured approach. I think the larger the building, the slower it might come back. But at the same course, I think we're going to find a combination of apprehension for those that are concerned, and they may stay home, but I think you're going to see a pent up demand. People like to
Mhm.
gather, people like to go to sports, people like to go to concerts. Um, and then it's going to be incumbent upon us as an industry that we do what we need to do to make them feel, not only make them feel, but the fact that they are safe. And if we can deliver those two things, I think we're going to get back to this sooner than people are anticipating. Um, and the challenges of an adversity will spawn innovation. And we may not even know what that innovation is going to be that's going to enable us to deliver a full NBA arena or a full NFL stadium or a full concert venue. And it's going to be steps. I don't think we're going to throw a light switch on September 13th and say every NFL stadium is going to be packed that day. I don't think that's going to happen. I think it's going to be stepped. How it's going to be stepped, not sure yet. I think there's a lot of smart people in our industry that are going to work together to find out what that is. What is that social distancing in a concourse that is only this wide? All right. Yeah, we can sit every third seat. We can sit every other row. They're all in the conversation right now. Are we going to take temperatures coming in? Are we going to hand out masks? Are we make them mandatory? Obviously that's easy for the staff coming in. It's the patrons that's a little more challenging on the physicality of that. And those type of things are what we're all going to work through now, so we can make them feel safe when they do come back. But I think the lion's share of us are going to work hard to make that happen.
Sure. And we're in a business of collective experience. So people there, I feel there will be pent up demand that we're going to want to be out and once again. Raj, how about you on your side?
Yeah, listen, it's I just like to say yes. Everything that Zane just talked about. Listen, it's true. I think the two words that we're using internally within our group and our organization, whether it's communications, marketing, the events group, the booking group, the two buzzwords that we're now moving towards are prove and trust, right? So we've got to prove to everybody that we're able to pull off these events and have people feel comfortable, and they've got to trust the fact that they can come to events and with limited to little to zero risk as a result of that. And and I think those are, everyone should be doing that, and if they haven't already, is just, how do we regain the trust? It's going to be through messaging. It's going to be through the policies and procedures that we have in place. And it's going to be how, as Zane talked about, how we scale up the events. We have a decent sized footprint for our facility here. So we're looking at everything right now of, hey, Zane's right. No one's blowing a magic whistle on September 13th and say 82,000 people can come into an NFL stadium. Hopefully, we're in a position where this happens, but the reality is right now we're not. So it's just, how do we even grow this by the dozens? What are events that we can put on that might only take place in our atrium, that might only take place in one of our clubs, or, even outside in our plaza, in our district of, hey, listen, okay, the first thing we're going to do is a group yoga, or we're going to do free guitar lessons or whatever. Just everyone's being cooped up in their house. And while people probably will not be ready to go 6 inches to 6 inches shoulder to shoulder with strangers, it's what should the venues, what should everyone be thinking of? Okay, this is a little out of our wheelhouse of something that we would normally do pre-COVID, but what can we do to start regaining the trust and getting people back down to at least thinking of the venues as something that they would want to go to when time is ready.
Yeah, that's great.
Renee,
well, I think yes.
If I may add,
Yes.
I think we also need to be able to adapt to what the change we don't know is tomorrow, which will help us scale up to this. And we just may be in a scenario where we will be full by the start of X number of seasons. But I think the NFL, the NBA, the NHL, the Major League Baseball, and our venues are poised to be able to do this, because we all have that common goal. And yes, there'll be guidelines set forth, and then we have to make the public feel comfortable with this specific venue, because every venue is different. Raj's arena, my arena. And so we both have to take what the industry and the leadership and the science says we have to do and make it fit into our building. And that's going to be the nuance that we're all going to be challenged with, that we've been in the past always been able to overcome and think we will.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. No, great points. I just want to thank you both so much for all of your insight and your valuable wisdom. So we really appreciate it so much. And please stay safe and stay healthy. And hopefully we'll see you at a game or a concert or a venue sometime soon. So thanks so much.
Thanks. Soon being the key word.
Yes, absolutely.